as we start, let me introduce my co-speakers with whom we do it today together. Well, welcome to Kawamura, our colleague from Switzerland, here, who is founding partner of Banana Studios. And Banana Studios is home of design-driven transformation, based in London, Lausanne, Basel, Madrid. And one of their key focus is also the future, workplace of the future. So Key, well, welcome. And our...
Thank you.
Thank you, Key, for being with us. And our third speaker is Philipp, who is co-founder and managing director of Shared-in-C, that is a leading German office and working desk subletting platform. So nobody knows as well as Philipp everything about how to commercialize or sublet your space. Warm welcome, Philipp. My name is Nikolay. I'm a co-founder of Yofix. We are Berlin-based startup offering management platform to manage hybrid teams and offices working from Berlin. And today, three of us, I think it's a great picture because we unite the three spaces of new hybrid work, because as I understand, Key, you're today working from home.
That's correct.
Philipp, maybe you say where you work today.
Actually, I'm in a co-working space in Eindhoven in the Netherlands, because I'm in Cologne. Yesterday was public holiday, so I decided to spend a long weekend on a camping site, and it's 20 minutes from here actually, but the internet on camping site is usually not that good, so I decided to rent a small room nearby, and yeah, I left the camping this morning and will return back actually after the webinar. So it's the so-called third place what I'm working from.
Great. And I'm today's office, so the more traditional historical part of this hybrid work. So maybe before we start, just we want to have it more interactive today. We will minimize the number of slides, or we'll try to avoid slides as much as possible. We want to speak so that you really learn, or we exchange our know-how. But maybe just to start this interactive part, maybe you could raise your hand, your visual hand with icon in the middle. For those of you who are already working in hybrid setup, or who is already starting to implement it. Okay, as expected, I think most, yes, most of you, that's great. And maybe now the second question, how many of you, well, let's take the hands out. Now the second question, how many of you plan to redesign your office because of hybrid work? Okay, we see some, yeah, well, it's close to that, okay. And to whom of you change or sublet of office or change of office is also a relevant topic? Okay, it's also number already done. Okay, that's someone was fast already. Great. Well, let's make sure that if you have questions, write it in comments, in chat. We'll try to come back to these questions afterwards. We'll leave some time at the end to make sure that we have more discussion also at the end. Well, to start with, hybrid work, well, it's since 1 year, it's more than normal. That's why it's surely quite natural that most of you already implemented it some way. And it changed a lot of things, how we communicate, how we meet, how we do our work. Probably one thing which didn't change to such extent is really office itself. It's more physical space, it takes longer, it takes some investments. So the question is, how do we proceed with that? And what we could do about the offices itself. As that's exactly what we want to speak to with you today. How should we plan our offices? How should we change the physical layout of offices? what kind of offices do we need, not only in terms of design, but also in terms of size, because office is still quite an expensive thing and quite significant portion of cost in your company. So how we could optimize also the costs, the expenditure of the offices, and how we can adapt office to your needs, but surely also what does it mean to manage to manage well a hybrid office. So that's why we want to share our experience. We want to answer your questions and see what new ideas maybe came up in the discussion. Let me start with Key coming to you with first questions. Well, at Studio Banana, you design, you plan office spaces for your clients. So what do you see, what is the new requirements on modern workspaces because of this new setup, of this NewWork setup? How do you see it? What do you experience?
Thank you, Nikolay, for the question. And it is a question that we get asked frequently by the market, by customers, organizations. And we try to simplify the answer to say it's LBD. What does LBD mean? It's less, better, and different. What do we mean by this? Well, the less, I think it's quite evident, and it's in a lot of people's minds, especially facility managers and real estate managers, reducing footprint, reducing costs, because there are new patterns of behavior, new ways of working that have enabled us to simply reduce the number of the real estate footprint. But if it was that simple, I think we would have done this probably a long time ago. And I think that we need to couple the less with better. So yes, you can probably invest less on your OPEX, on renting space, but you actually need to improve the experience of what you're delivering to your collaborators. You need to turn that into a more meaningful experience. People need to feel there's a reason, there's an added value in coming to a corporate work environment. It's something different than what they get in a third space, like where Philipp is today, or like in a home environment, like where I am today as well. And that comes with lots of other questions. What does better mean, obviously? And then the different. And I think this is the one that's probably less evident, but this is the one that really requires the most digging. Each organization needs to think about their future self. What do they want to be in the future? And in some organizations, maybe where collaborators are constantly out in the field, the purpose of coming together to a physical environment is to convene. So that's, you need to turn the office space into a place for convening, socially, community convening. In an organization that's constantly pushing its boundaries because it's very much focused on innovation, maybe people need to come to the office to collaborate. So it's more of a workshop environment that you need to think. Or to give another example, an organization where there's a lot of customer engagement and services and products need to be delivered in an immersive way. Maybe you need to think of your future work environment as a flagship store where you deliver an immersive experience. So that's what we mean by different. It's no longer good enough to say we've got meeting rooms and desks. You need to think, what is the type of organization you want to be in the future? That's what will define the difference. So less, better, and different.
Maybe one question on that. So, there are different researchers. Last one was from Personalwirtschaft, which is a HR magazine in Germany, saying, well, people, I think almost 30% of people said that working in the office they're more productive. So the remaining part was more comfortable or more productive in home or same productive. So most people are comfortable to work at home. The question is, how do you experience your client requests? Do they need desks really for concentrated work in the office, or it's only about collaboration, so coming to the office to collaborate with others? So how do you see this shift? I mean, I understand all companies are different, but what is your experience?
Let me start by being a little provocative. Recently, I gave a talk and I gave the title Hype Break Work, because there's a lot of hype around hybrid. And of course, Philipp, Nikolay, myself, my colleagues, we are very much in favor and champions of hybrid work, but there is a lot of hype around this. And like in any hype, sometimes there's a tendency to oversimplify things and to think that hybrid work is just about a combination of head office and home office. And I believe that it is actually a much more messy, much more complex, I would say, subject. Philipp is the example of that. Today, he's in a third space, and it's a third space that's not even in his country, where he typically works, which is Germany. It's in another country. So suddenly there's a whole range of new aspects that need to be taken into consideration. That's why we talk a lot about the network place. Suddenly our workplaces have become a network, and you need to manage that network. It's a much more challenging task for HR professionals, for facility professionals. So I'm not answering the question directly, but I would like to state that there are these 50 shades of gray between the head office and the home office, and there's fascinating opportunities there that make it both for the organization, for the company, and for the employee, for the collaborator, beneficial to consider. Do I work better here? Do I work better there? How do I become self-aware, more self-conscious of that? And also, and we get often asked, what's the golden rule? There's no cookie cutter solution. We can't treat everyone the same. There are personality, different working styles, different profiles of people. There are people who can concentrate at home. There are people who can concentrate on the move. There are people who need a dedicated work environment for concentration. Just to take the example of concentration, and if you imagine all the different interactions and activities that you actually perform at work, so it becomes a much more diverse place. Yeah. We need to consider that diversity.
Cool. Well, Philipp, maybe coming now to this first L from LBD, less. I think that's where your company is coming into play. So maybe you could reflect what is your experience with how companies get along with space and what you do to support them with that.
Yeah. Actually, I guess what we've seen is that during the last 2 years, I guess there were a lot of companies that had unused office space, but we've seen that during the pandemic. Probably we're still in, but we see it. But the last 2 years, there was some tendency to wait what to do with this, because I guess there was some uncertainty about, okay, how much space do we really need in the future? How many of our colleagues will come back to the office? But I guess now we're let's say the last 3 months, I would say, when now that the companies are seeing, okay, how many of the employees are actually coming back and how often. So I guess it's getting more clear how much space they actually need, and we see that. I guess it's still a kind of a process. Yeah, some companies are far, and some are still a little bit unsecure how much space they need. But what we definitely see, and we have a lot of examples at the moment that it's quite often, I guess, the utilization of the office is still something about a fourth till a third of what they actually have. Yeah, and so many companies really expect that it will stay this way in the future as well, and but I guess you don't really know how it will actually develop in the next year or so what we actually do is that we think that it's not really wise to spend your money in office space that you don't need, because and we as a marketplace that actually connects companies with unused space with other companies, smaller companies, startups, agencies, self-employed people who are actually searching for small office space, because there is still quite a huge demand for, let's say, smaller flexible offices, because they not all served via co-working spaces or WeWork, design offices, etc. So we actually bring these two sides together, and what we know is that for companies who have unused office space, it's not I guess nobody's really, it's the core to do a task of somebody in the company to take care of unused office space. So what we try to make this as easy as possible for the companies, because and to offer a lot of services that makes this much easier for the companies, so that you don't have to be experienced in that, because we have a lot of experience in how to price, how to set prices so that there is a demand, so that it's quite fast to sublease the office space. And we have a lot of services around that. But what we see is that even though we were asked already, let's say a year ago, everybody told me, okay, there must be a huge supply but actually it was a year ago, it was not that much, because the companies were still waiting and maybe not that sure if they want to let other companies in their offices, etc. But we see that this changed now. So now the companies are much more open and much more clear on how much space they still need. And that's the current situation.
Maybe just to get your opinion, on following figure. So from your fixed experience, as we manage the space, we see utilization of our clients, Philipp. So we see a lot that it's indeed average utilization is like 20-30%, but then sometimes like on one day more people come, so on Friday or during the week, and that speaking to office managers say, well, we want to keep this office because we don't know when people will come. So for this one day when suddenly everyone tries to come to the office. But actually, if you manage the utilization, we understand that you can really cut it by the number of desks you can cut by 50%. And that's what we see also from many of our clients who do this step and really downsize their office or redesign the office, that 50% less desk is easily achievable and even still too much. Would you confirm that, or what is your experience working with your clients?
I guess that what we typically see, if it's larger companies that have, let's say, several floors in their office, that I would say that typically if they have, we have some clients that have 2 floors and then they can reduce it by to 1. So in the past it was more, because we're doing this a couple of years now, it was more that companies had single rooms maybe that they wanted to sublease. What we see increasing a lot is that companies actually complete floors that they don't need anymore. So it's also for larger companies, and this has changed a lot. I've just seen during this week, I guess we got especially in Berlin, but also in other cities, many new supply on our platform, which is complete floors, and that's quite new actually. That wasn't the case in the past. In the past, it was more single rooms. So that's, you can see that companies have even have larger spaces they don't need anymore. So I guess that 50% is probably also what I can confirm from what we see at the moment.
And probably that companies now have a bit more predictability, saying, well, 1 year working this hybrid mode, we can really trust that the space would be sufficient for us, right?
Yeah, I guess this is in the past it was more like companies, why did they have unused space? It was more because they read some buffer space for future growth, or they have let's say reduced the headcount and the contract was still running. That was the typical in the past, but now we see that it's more stable and that they see, okay, we probably won't grow into it anymore, and we can predict that it's there probably until the end of the contract. That's what most people think, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because as we started to speak to some clients, they say, well, we don't need desk booking because we have a lot of desks and we have a long contract, we cannot do anything about it. And I say, okay, then let's speak in a few months after your CFO will see that you're paying for the office and office is not being used. And we see that this picture is changing for several reasons. Well, first, it's really, at some point, it's ridiculous to pay for something that you don't use. Second, and I think it's also a great thing, people see that empty office, it's really a scary thing. You come to the office, it's huge spaces, you're few people sitting there. So also the atmosphere is really broken, and it's really destroys corporate culture. What we see huge demand for, it's really on one hand side, it's what Key mentioned already. You have to motivate people to come to the office, and it's truly the question of what is the physical setup you offer, but also actually from our experience of our clients, the major motivator for people to come to the office is to meet colleagues. So that's where we speak to different companies. Actually, to know the attendance, the schedule of your colleagues becomes most critical part in hybrid work, because only then you are motivated to commute, to drive to the office, to meet your colleagues. So that's where it's not only about make everything bookable in your office, like desks, meeting rooms, locks. That is important. That's what we also offer. But really help people to coordinate and to meet in the office. And that's what really creates this, new experience, or helps to coordinate. Even if you come just 1 or 2 days to the office, you can be sure that you will not be alone sitting in this amazing office, but that you meet your colleagues, your team. And that's what Yofix also provides. So software to easily coordinate, easily plan, check who is when to the coming to the office. And we see it increasingly important also providing data to optimize, both to optimize space, that you can analyze which desks or areas are used more or less, but also to manage your teams, to understand, which team is coming when, how often, which team was for a long time not anymore in the office. So I think this managing, becomes not only managing of space, but it's integrated with managing of people and attendance, and giving them transparency to meet together, to work in the office, and to have fun. So to have really this positive office experience. Because I think office could be as beautiful as possible, but if you spend 1 hour coming to the office, nobody's there, then it's really quite frustrating experience. Maybe nonetheless, subletting office, a lot of people have they never did it. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to put walls in the office. So Philipp, could you elaborate briefly how do you support? So if I have huge office, I use only part of it. So how can you support companies in that?
Actually, what I would recommend to do first is somehow it depends a lot on the type of space that you have available. Yeah, is it if you're a larger company and you have a complete floor, that you don't need anymore? There are several options actually you have. You can, for example, try to speak to your lessor, and check if you can actually give it back. I guess a couple of years ago that would have been quite easy, because there was a lot of demand and less supply, but this has become much more difficult at the moment. So I guess this option of giving back parts of your office has become quite difficult, because the lessors or the real estate owners are happy if they have somebody in the contract, because time's quite difficult for them as well. So that's probably not the most likely option. And then, as I said, it's always good to check, okay, what's in your contract, how long is it still available, because that also somehow determines what is let's say the target group on the demand side. Because I guess what is important, that if you have some unused space in your office, you have to see it as a kind of a product that you want to offer to somebody else. And you have to understand, okay, who is actually the demand side, who's actually looking for this type of offices, and what are their alternatives. And in what we think is most important, and that what we have a team it's our customer success team, that are actually quite experienced in subleasing, and they can help companies to define the product. That's so to see, okay, what is a good pricing, and how can you optimize your earnings with the office? How can you make it fast as possible? So how could you actually if you have a floor, let's say, that consists of several offices of single rooms, for example, versus a private office, an open space office, it's a completely different product, because for small rooms, for example, there's a huge demand, so that's quite easy if you try to sublease single rooms. It's quite easy, and there's a huge demand. If you have a complete open space office like 500 square meters, there you also have competition from, let's say, regular offices. Companies who are searching for that can also rent normal offices with a long contract where they can say how they want it to look like. So you have to make sure, okay, how do I have to position this? It has to be maybe a little bit cheaper. It has to be more flexible. Maybe the furniture has to be included. So that's, I guess, most important is to understand, okay, what's the demand side, and we have access to this demand, and we have also experience in what they're looking for. So I guess the first thing really is to look what type of office do I have, and for who is it interesting, and how can I actually position it. That's, I guess, most important.
Philipp, yes, I wanted to build on what you're saying, because hearing you speaking, and of course we have spoken before already in the past, but what I see as a incredible potential in what you do as a marketplace is the matchmaking opportunities. Of course, the most basic benefit, and it is the pain point, is the unused real estate. So how can you monetize that? How can you help companies alleviate that problem? But the real potential I see is in the communities that you can help build. In what two companies do you put together? It's a little bit like I cannot stop thinking about Airbnb as I hear you, of course. Like the immediate benefit is that, yes, I'm going to pay less than in a hotel. But what stays in my mind, I've been using Airbnb for many years, and I'm sure many people in this call as well. What stays in my mind is not how much I saved compared to a hotel. What stays in my mind is the experience, is the people I met, is how nice the host was, is how that person helped me discover the city that I didn't know. So the experience, and that has, I believe, a huge potential and a huge added value.
Yeah, that's actually, I mean, our company is called Share D&C, and the D is for desk, and the C is supposed to be for coffee. So that was also somehow represented in the name of the company, because we thought that while drinking a coffee together, the companies that share office can actually create synergies and come to new ideas. And I actually just had an interview with an owner of a PR agency in Munich on Tuesday for a company success, or for a customer success case. And he has I guess a building. He's rented a building with 4 floors, and 2 floors he has completely subleased to, I guess, 12 different companies actually. And he said that he was very grateful actually, because it's so much fun for him. It was not just the cost. That was also a driver for him, but he said that he even asked us, okay, do you have maybe some other companies nearby that want to do something similar? I could do it for them because it's so much fun, and because I have so many interesting companies actually here, and also some companies he now works with. So that's definitely something that can create of this, or can be built of this. And you have to make sure that the companies you share your office with somehow fit to you. Best way also in a professional way, but at least in that you somehow like them, and that it's nice to share the office with. I guess that's a good point. The main driver is the cost, but the decision, but I guess the outcome can be also very inspiring and good community in the office.
Let me just pick up one question from our comments from Sandrine and a think few others about networking and, well, in this hybrid setup, because I think it tackles different things what we discussed. So it's indeed very important, and that's what a lot of HR people with whom I speak are really worried about, that if people just stay at home or just come once to the office, one time a week to the office, that there are a lot of social contacts are getting lost, and this networking and collaboration in the company is also disappearing. So I think that's very important point. That's why also as we talk to our clients, we say, well, very important to set up the rules. rules could be still give flexibility, but to set expectations that yes, we want to have one office day for a team, and then one office day for, I don't know, for some other, for the whole office. So to set up clear attendance rules and to define how flexible we are, but also surely to make to enable colleagues to meet in the office and to enhance this physical meetups, because otherwise it's really a risk that at some point there are only individuals and no team, and surely also for people this loyalty to the company getting lower and lower. So with all advantages of home office, I think there are a lot of companies who really very considered how we can still bring people back to the office, enable and enhance physical meetings. And for that, it's again, so setting up some rules, setting up some team days for special teams, and helping people to coordinate, to collaborate easily. So we see a lot of companies who, well, I would say half of our clients, they tend to say we want our colleagues to be 2-3 days in the office. We definitely have also some companies with whom we speak who say we go fully remote. And so we see also this setups. I think that was also one of the questions. But most companies still want to have some anchor as an office, as a place to meet, to collaborate. And it's important really to keep in mind how to motivate them, showing them when the colleagues are there, but also enabling them physical space that's really comfortable and really enjoyable. So I think that's one part of the question. Maybe speaking about the third place, because we had this discussion also with my colleagues before that. Maybe you could comment or elaborate a bit further on your idea of the third place and how you see it from your perspective.
Certainly, yes. I did want to add something to what you just mentioned, Nikolay, also to Sandrine's question. Rules, policies, rituals, you name it, they're good. They help. They simplify decision making. But that's answering, in my opinion, the how. How do we put this into action? I think that we should also ask ourselves why. Why do I come to a workplace where I will be physically under the same roof with my colleagues? And you mentioned to socialize, and I think that is an evident one. That is a simple one. I think that once again, referring to the D I mentioned earlier, the difference. Each organization needs to find their why. Why do I invite my colleagues to come together? It's not because if they come together just because there's a rule, that's a very poor reason to come, obviously. Or just to share a coffee. I think that there could be, and I'm sure this is our experience working with organizations. When you start digging, you get to the core of the why. And sometimes it can be, as I said earlier, it's about training and learning skills. Sometimes it's about connecting to the values of the brand because you feel disconnected. And I think that something was mentioned in her question. So we really need to understand the real why. And then the rules, the policies, they help definitely to make it more of a habit and simplify the decision making, as I said earlier. To your question now, Nikolay. Yes, and this comes back to this idea of the hype of hybrid. If everything we've learned out of a dramatic pandemic is that we can work at home or we can work in the office, I think that we've missed an opportunity. And this is where I find a super exciting space for innovation and for new models to emerge. Third spaces, they've been around even before. I mean, many models have been around, but they were kind of marginal. They were never put the spotlight on them. There's a couple or three even that I would like to share with you today. We're exploring some of them. One of them is the Hoffice, which is a movement that started in the Nordics, where colleagues from the same company do home office, but at a colleague's house. So several, maybe living in the proximity, they come to someone's house and they work in the living room. So you have somehow the benefit of socializing, of not feeling alone, also the convenience of having a place that's nearby and that's domestic, that's cozy. And you're connected, you feel connected. And it doesn't require much, really, to activate this. In the as I said, in the Nordics, this is quite popular. And when we discovered this a few years ago as part of a research we were doing, I found it fascinating. Why don't we practice more office? Another one that we have developed for a client of ours is the neighbor hub. Is typically third spaces, co-working spaces that were located, or they are located close, well, in AAA sites, very centric, close to transport hubs. However, as people commute less, and they stay more at home, but also suffer the inconvenience of working at home. I think we can all agree that our homes are designed to live, not to work in. So we don't all have amazing setups at home. We start realizing, well, can we not find the best of two worlds? A place that's close to my home, but offers professional, ideal work setups. And this is something we've introduced recently to a project in which we're working. A co-working space, you could say, for a neighborhood. So you go there and you have a good setup and you share it with people in your neighborhood. The familiar faces, they work in different organizations, in different companies. It's like a co-working space, but it's professional. So again, another emerging model, another amazing opportunity to design business models, new environments, new experiences. And the third one is also another one that we have introduced as some of our clients to, is corporate satellites. We did once a mapping for a client of ours where we looked at the postcodes of their employees and the postcode of their head office. And we realized that most employees were living in one part of the country. Well, Switzerland is a small country, but they were living in one part of the country and they were commuting for an average of an hour and a half to come to the head office. And they were living in the same region. Then the idea was kind of very simple. Well, why don't we make their life easier? Why don't you invest in a corporate satellite? It's a corporate environment. It has all the standards of your company, but it's closer to your employees. So you make it easier. You bring the barrier, the threshold down to make it more accessible for your employees to make the step of, okay, I'm going to go out of my home and work together with my colleagues. So there you are. It's different examples and many more that we could and we should explore.
So that sounds, especially the last one, sounds very interesting, and probably you can also mix them, because what you could at the end of the day do as a company, you could say, well, we just rent a space in some local co-working for our employees and enable this advantages of both sides. So that's
correct.
That sounds very interesting.
One question from my side on that. Do you think that this, because the satellite offices, that's also something we heard already, let's say 1.5 years ago when this all popped up, then we also thought that this would be quite interesting. But have you seen already many companies implemented something like this? Because I think also it's, from my perspective, it's probably maybe even a little bit better than putting your employees in co-working spaces where they live. Yeah, that's also an option, and that's also something we provide. But I guess that if you somehow want to have a mixture of people feeling connected to your company and not having commutes that far, I guess these satellite offices for me sounds quite interesting, or like a very good not compromise. It doesn't sound, but how do you see that?
It's an emerging model. I mean, I'm not going to claim authorship on this, but it is one that we have introduced some of our clients to. For instance, a banking institution in Switzerland who has a headquarters, and people were really traveling long distances to come there from other cities. And we said, well, why don't we create a network of these satellite spaces? Small, super well located, attractive, and also attractive for their own customers, not to come and do banking transactions. It's not a bank agency, it's a working space. So their customers can also use those spaces for meetings, for instance. We started with a pilot that was so successful that very soon after they already invested on a second one in another city. So they start building a little bit of a network to be a bit more accessible and spread in the territory. They are small sites, 300 square meters. You don't need a massive space. And we've done that also with an insurance company. With also, this was a bigger site, about 1,000 square meters, because that's precisely the company for which we identified that most of their employees were living in one part of the country and their headquarters was somewhere else. So why make them commute constantly when you could create something closer to them, still corporate?
I would also think that this putting your employees in, let's say, or allow them to work in co-working spaces or other type of offices near their home, that's probably something that would be a good fit for, let's say, very rural areas, or if you are just a smaller company. Yeah, but for the larger companies, I think that this satellite office thing would be probably from my perspective, the best solution to combine the benefits of office and working from home. Yeah, I would like to work in such an environment. Yeah.
I would like to bring a few more ideas from our experience of what and also discussion with the clients, because good hybrid office is actually not only an office, but it's also the place where your employees now work. And what we received a number of demands from clients asking, well, how can we support our employees in home office? And we started thinking about it, and we understood that actually, well, if your colleagues are working 3-4 days a week in home office, before you were investing in your office in internet, coffee, fruits, etc., to make it good office environment. We see now more and more requests for companies who want to invest in home offices, and it's not furniture we discuss. Sometimes they ask about it also, but there are a few things which are really popular. So one is, well, what is the major problem in home office? It's internet. So we have a partnership with Deutsche Telekom in Germany. So our clients can get preferred access to order these speed boxes for their employees. Because at the end of the day, it's the best solution you could support. You can give back to your employees money you save on your office. And I think that's a discussion which we see in many companies. We save on our office, we sublet, we change contract, etc. But we don't need such a huge space. But we want to take care about employees where they work. So internet is definitely one great thing. And there are a number of solutions. So how to really enable better internet in your home offices. And there is another big thing that we're also now preparing. Well, how could you, well, before your employees could have a lunch, sometimes in your office or fruits, how could you subsidize free lunches for your employees in home office? So that is also an amazing thing, and we're thinking in this direction. So I think it's also worthwhile for workplace managers, HR managers to think, well, how can we support employees, how we can take care of them, how we can show that we, even if they work at home, it's still our workplace. So how we can support them in their home office environment, or maybe even if they work in local co-working, maybe they can still order free lunch 1 or 2 days a week, because the company at the end of the day saves a lot of money, or should save a lot of money on the office cost. And I think the best way to invest back in employees and the new way of working, and that's where surely you need first, optimize the space, make it smaller, make it different or better, but should also manage who is coming when and how you get people together, so this networking and corporate culture doesn't get lost. But then also see how can we support and invest in people even if they don't come to the office each day. So that's where we as the office also see huge potential and huge demand from companies because they want to invest in people, or many of these companies, and they're looking actively for some opportunities. How could they do it? Yeah.
Nikolay, I find this fascinating, and it talks about a holistic approach to the subject. It's not just about place, real estate. It's also about infrastructure. It's also about feeding yourself. All these things are part of the experience of work. What I guess, and this is not neither a question, it's just a statement. The challenge is that this requires revisiting a whole business model. And of course, each of us is putting a piece of to that. Philipp, with your business, you're helping alleviate some of the pain points of that business model. But we still, I think, are in the very early stages of redefining that business model, the true operating, resilient, solid hybrid work business model.
I think it's totally right, but I think that's not we redefine the business model, but the world outside forces us also to do it. Because if you look into recruiting departments, the world is already different. If you want to recruit best people, you don't look in radius of 50 kilometers, you look broader. And then you're forced to think about, well, what kind of organization we are, what kind of office do we have to offer, what kind of office policy. But I think the companies out there, they have to adapt, because otherwise they'll just lose the war for talent. And it has surely direct implication on workplace philosophy, on your office space, etc. But I think there is what we see, well, surely it doesn't apply for 100% of companies, but I think for 70 or 80%, you have to go to embrace this hybrid work, or sometimes remote work, if you really want to get best people. And then is a question, well, how can you motivate them? How can you offer them best setup? And again, the poll shows, so for nearly for 50% of people, the opportunity to work hybrid or remote becomes very important to decide on the job. And that's where surely most companies have no way but to think how to adopt it. Maybe it's time now to come back to questions. And if someone, well, we have our chat, but if someone would like just to step into discussion with questions or comments, then is the right time to do it. You should just unmute and start speaking.
Otherwise, we go through the questions that Juan,
sure.
Saskia, and Seville have posted.
Yeah, we discussed partially already this virtual space. So yes, and networking opportunities in virtual office. In my perspective, you should try to combine best of both worlds, because we see purely virtual organizations. Surely they do exist. Some of them are very successful. It's probably not a solution for any company, and you still have to bring people together to create the social ties and networking and enhance collaboration. But again, there are different. Some companies, they just leave an office for some meeting rooms and collaboration space with no desk at all. So that's already also sufficient for us. So Saskia, was a new space for? I think that's also a great idea to offer your unused space to partners. I don't know, Philipp, that's actually probably also what Shared in C is also helping with, be it partners or be it external extended partner network.
Yeah, that's actually, as I said, that's one part that is important for some companies, not for all, is actually to to find companies sharing the office with that they also can somehow work with and can exchange with, and that happens a lot actually in the, let's say, somehow in the agency world. Yeah, that what we can see is that especially agencies, they are looking for some designers, etc., that they would like to work with and try to build these synergies. It's not that relevant in all industries, but especially in some industries, that's sometimes also the driver for why companies.
Can I filter by shedding see what kind of company do I want to have as a tenant, or what kind
no, actually, we had this feature in the past, but it wasn't used that often. So, but what we do is that a company, if they create or then add and show their offer, what they can actually do is to describe what type of companies they would like to share their office with, but it's not a search functionality from the website.
Okay. Jörg, raise your hand.
Just one thing that's coming in my mind is about the severity of the intention of hybrid work. So during the COVID-19 crisis, it was a great opportunity to keep the company working, send all the people at home. And now, if you, my perfect example is Apple. Apple is trying to sell their home office solutions, and they are making huge advertisements, but forcing their employees back into the office. What kind of commitment is this? So, on one hand, use the benefits, and then if this crisis is being turned over, force the people back. Or look at Tesla, where this crazy guy told the people, come back into the office or you're fired. So I don't get it.
Well, we can try to invite for the next webinars both guys, but I think it's I could just share experience either from our company or from our clients as a motivation I see. I think it's a lot of time gain. So for me personally, I drove today to the office. I will drive back home. It's 2 hours. So it's 2 hours I could spend for sports, for kids, for doing something different instead of sitting in the S-Bahn. And so it's really a lot of time. So it's actually additional weekend day. So I think that's for many the major driver, but probably it's much more to add. Saskia, do you want to add?
I have a question too. I don't know. Do you really consider that you're taking those 2-hour traject for laser? Because in my opinion, the time I spend in the transport every day, it just helped me to disconnect and get off the work in my head. And when I'm at home, I don't disconnect. I have those 2 more hours that I'm not spending in a transport, but it's like I'm hurrying to just shut down my computer and get back to my daughter, and just my days goes on like that. So I'm not sure the connection right is always that simple. You cannot just use that argument. I think it's more complicated. I mean.
I definitely. I mean, it's definitely multiple reasons, but I think there's better work-life balance and better you're more master of your own time schedule and you have more flexibility. I think that's what also different polls show. It's definitely for a lot of people quite a significant trigger, but it's definitely much more complex.
But Nikolay and Sandrine, I guess this is actually the best example why it's so important not to have one size fits all. Commuting is bad for him, and the owner says, okay, it gives me some time to separate between work and my life. Yeah, I also have some days where I actually think it's Sundays. I'm completely on Sandrine's side and say, okay, it's nice to go to the office. I can hear my podcast, and when I go back, it's relaxing, and I'm not shutting down the computer, and the kids are already waiting downstairs. Yeah, so I'm happy about these 40 minutes of commuting. Some days I'm so in a hassle and I have so much to do that I think, okay, I can definitely spend this 40 hours much better. Yeah, so I guess that's why this flexibility is so important, that somebody can go to the office and the other one doesn't, and some days you can do it and some days you don't. Yeah, so I guess that's somehow the best example that the same things can be seen very different from two's perspective.
Saskia, you have a question or comment?
Well, I wanted to add on what Jörg said and ask a question around that. Well, there are some companies that now say 100% back to the office. So what is actually the cultural change that we need to go through in order to really live hybrid and embrace it and embrace the flexibility? So that's maybe also a question to the speakers of what's the experiences there.
Well, if I may start, I just see, well, I'm doing like most demo calls with our new clients, and I had already our first demo call today in the morning. I think for most, and surely it's not representative for 100% of companies out there, but we just see that for most companies, it's already a reality. And the same as weekends, that they support and give this opportunity to employees. So I see in many companies this change already taking place, but it's surely very different in different segments of mid-sized companies, large enterprises. But well, being in this segment, I see that for many of them, change is already there. I think it's already surely a question of trust. I think that's a very important topic where a lot of companies still struggling, especially SMEs or mid-sized business. So how do I trust that people are working really? And so I think it's again also for these companies to align common rules. So where these are working hours, because some companies say also working hours are very flexible. You can work whenever you want, be it in the night or during the day. But really defining some common vision. So how do we work together, and also communicating a lot about it. So I think to have really alignment in the organization, to have really good process, how to implement, how to design and implement hybrid work, but then surely having also the right tools really to monitor it and to manage and understand, are you doing well or not so good? Is it goes along the plan, or you are just completely wrong? So I think important thing is it is a huge experiment. For most companies, there is no blueprint. So you have really to plan, check where you stay, and adopt and optimize. That's our suggestion. Daria, you have one question? And because we are running slowly out of time, maybe we jump to Daria and then...
Yeah, I hope you hear me well.
Yes.
So I would just like to add on what you just said about the trust of the company. And how this can help to the hybrid working space. I came in a bit late, so I missed quite a big chunk of your conversation, so I apologize for that. But I would maybe suggest you, if you're looking for some more information, to look at the self-organized companies. So where you don't have hierarchy, where this trust is more divided between peers. So that's an interesting experience that we went through in our company. We went through all the highs and lows that you can imagine in the working 100% remote, and then coming back, not coming back, and coming back, and then just giving some kind of like a free patron of saying like, just let us know when you're here or when you're not here. So yeah, I think that self-organized structures have some interesting approaches. And also we studied also quite some patterns in how this applies to certain needs of people. So kids, no kids, small spaces, you know, things like that. And it's intense. It's really intense. But yeah, just wanted to add this on since it's 11 o'clock, and I guess this meetup is heading to the end. But thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot. I would just share one screen with our contact details. So it was great discussion. Thank you a lot. I hope we could clarify some questions. You see here our emails here. Feel free to write us. You'll find our contacts on LinkedIn also. We sure will be happy to follow up on any questions, or if you have requests on our companies. And my special thanks goes to Philipp and Key for joining me today in this discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nikolay,
Thank you.
Philipp.
And have a nice Friday and a lovely weekend. And Thanks for joining us.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.